Now, the Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, brace yourselves for this one, has insisted that Sir Keir Starmer is a working person, which doesn't seem to fit in with his own definition of a working person. So that means he could be amongst those protected from the government's controversial tax hikes in the budget on Wednesday.
Number 10 has then faced backlash over its definition of a working person, suggesting that those with assets, property and savings could be hit with tax rises, as if Keir Starmer hasn't got any of those.
About 7.7 million quid, apparently. We're joined by former Middlesbrough Mayor and political commentator now, Andy Preston. Morning, Andy. It just seems like they've got themselves as an absolute model with this turn of phrase, which has ended up being so important.
Hi, Stephen. Morning, everyone.
Morning.
Absolutely. They're in a massive muddle, and it's their own making. And everyone's confused, aren't they, about a working person? I don't know, George Soros, David Beckham, the part-time cleaner, who is and who isn't. The truth is, tax should be really simple. It's really painful. Everyone hates it. And if they'd said from the beginning, OK, there's going to be a bit of temporary pain, but medium term it's going to be better, long term is going to be great, but we're going to put income tax up for the richest, and it's a temporary measure, I think no one would have left the country. Everyone would say fair enough. But instead, they've tried to obfuscate and hide the truth that tax rises are coming. And it's getting worse and worse. Everybody's confused. Their popularity is plummeting.
Just had a very productive meeting.
Doesn't matter, does it? They have an enormous majority in the Commons, and they've got to fix a problem. That's how they see it. So they're wriggling, aren't they, at the moment? But there's no doubt. Would you suggest that we're probably all going to be faced with consequences come this budget that we don't like?
And there's no doubt that we're all going to be a little bit poorer off. And I think actually as a politician, you can get away with that as long as you're really clear and you say it's temporary and the future's going to be much better. I think that they've got a big majority, but they're in big trouble. They're extraordinarily unpopular. I predict it's going to get worse and worse. And all of the new MPs with tiny majorities will be feeling the heat from their constituents and getting anxious. And I do predict Keir Starmer won't last the full 5 years. Again, tax should be really simple. And if you make it simple and you say it's temporary, people largely conform and are quite happy.
The issue here seems to be, more than anything else, it's not the policy, because, as you say, something's got to be done. We were told that before the election by the IMF, whichever party won, we were going to have to see tax rises and spending cuts. The problem seems to be transparency here.
Yes, they can't lie straight in bed. They can't. What's really interesting is they try to say as little as possible, but they seem to say too much at the same time, and they're tying themselves in knots. The business community is confused. Consumer sentiment has plummeted, impacting house sales and retail sales, and it's a mess of their own making. And look, I don't want to be too partisan here. I was an independent politician, by the way, but this is shambolic. Everything that this government touches seems to go wrong. When it's about small stuff, it's not too much of an issue. When it's about your international standing and you balancing the books, this is really serious stuff. So for everyone's sake, I hope they get their act together. But we need clarity, and tax is complex, so they've got to make it as simple and as clear as possible.
Well, clarity, I guess, will come this week when we hear the budget. And as we've all agreed, that most people are going to feel miffed about it. But then you always do with budgets, don't you? Somebody's always offended. The problem was the definition of a working person, wasn't it? That's the problem.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, it's crazy. I think Piers Morgan's, was saying that is he a working person? As I said earlier, David Beckham, George Soros, the part-time cleaner. Where does this go? But they used that phrase, Anne, to try and say very little but reassure people. But it's created much more confusion, and it's almost a metaphor for how they've behaved since they were elected. There's confusion, no one knows where they stand, and everybody's fearing the worst. But you're right. Look, there'll be tax rises. It'll be a bit painful. If they do it cleverly, we'll all move on. But they need to instill a sense of optimism. That's what we all want. We want to believe the future's going to be a bit better, and that's what's missing.
Is there an acknowledgement, do you think, that Keir Starmer's put both feet in his mouth with this when he said, it's people with assets aren't working people. People who can write a cheque to dig themselves out of a hole aren't working people. But yesterday we spoke to James Murray, Exchequer Secretary to the Treasury, who said anyone who goes out to work and gets paid for it is a working person. Now we've had Rachel Reeves say, well, even Keir Starmer's a working person. It sounds like they're doing some really serious rowing back.
Yes, I'm sorry for laughing, but it is preposterous, isn't it? And they're trying to put a lid on it, but every time they try and put a lid on the conversation, it gets worse and worse. I think the long and short of it is we've got to protect the very poorest. If you tax the very richest too much, they do a runner. So what I fear is that we end up with a squeezed middle, the hard-working people who save a little bit. They might have a buy-to-let property or a few shares, heaven forbid. If they're taxed to death, and they'll be very scared now, by the way, that's the worst outcome. Look, as Anne said, we're very close to the detail. I don't think it'll be as bad as they made out, and I think that actually we'll just move on and get on with it. But it's been a shambles in terms of communication.
OK. Andy Preston, good to see you. Thanks very much indeed. It's ridiculous that we're talking about PR and communication, actually, because that should be the least important thing. In a way.
I think they've just dug themselves into a hole and they can't get out of it now. Because I feel, don't you, that maybe what they were trying to really say is the old-fashioned term working class.
Well, yes, in a way.
But you can't say that anymore.
Oh, I don't know.
So they say working people, but, there are lots of middle class and upper class, I suppose, people, if those terms still apply in any way, who still work for a living.
Of course they do. Of course they do. And, of course, what's interesting as well is this whole business of... it's where being in opposition catches up with you, is that Rachel Reeves said 18 months ago that freezing tax thresholds, which now she's going to extend beyond where the Tories had them, was a stealth tax on working people.
And now she's doing it.
Now she's doing it. So by their own definition, they're taxing working people. So it's all a mess. A bit of clarity would be nice. As I say, we'll get that on Wednesday. And we will get that clarity.
We'll get it, but I'll bet you we'll hear the terms working people a lot. Yeah. It'll be there and we'll know what it will mean, and all the financial experts will be analysing it and tell us what it means for all of us. But it will be clothed in these funny, weird terms that Labour likes to use again, isn't it? Like working people.
Oh, I long for the old days where the Chancellor used to stand at the dispatch box with a glass of whiskey and a cigar.
Yeah, that's right, yeah. I think it was Dennis Healey used to do that with a glass of whiskey, I think, didn't he?
And Ken Clarke, I think he had a cigar.
Yeah.
But those days are long gone.
Absolutely. New days.
And let's see what's in the papers this morning with the political editor of HuffPost UK, Kevin Schofield, and the journalist Claire Muldoon. Good morning to you both.
Morning.
Right, let's talk about the...
In
the Telegraph, Kevin, let's talk about the...
budget.
The budget.
Yeah, so Wednesday is the big day, obviously. And the government have managed to get themselves into a real mess over the definition of working people. We feel like we've been talking about this now for days and days and days. What is a working person? But this is because Labour put it in their manifesto. They wouldn't put up taxes on working people, but they can't define what a working person is, because basically, one way or another, I think all of us are going to pay more tax.
Well, if historically we have difficulties, giving what the documentation or the evidence of any words are, they can't really define anything, can they, as a party?
No, that's true. So anyway, Rachel Reeves said now that she could only commit to not raising key taxes on workers. So that's another new phrase.
That's another word.
So by that, she's talking about income tax, national insurance or VAT, but obviously there are lots of other taxes which...
to be fair to them, they are the only three they promised they would not put up before the election.
They did, but I think it's the fact that they said they won't put up taxes on working people. So lots of working people will have, shares, or maybe will be landlords, or they're still working, aren't they?
They are.
So if their taxes have gone up, then surely that is a working person's tax rate going up. So they've tried in many, many different ways to try and redefine or define in the first place what a working person is, but then they roll back on it and they just made a real mess.
Absolutely failed miserably. I mean, from the start of this government's administration, they have not kept up their word on anything. They've just taken away, not delivered, and now they're threatening all of this. I mean, people are incandescent with rage. They don't know what's going to happen on this budget. And where's the opposition for this budget, incidentally? I mean, they're going through a change of governance at the Conservative Party as well. But Rishi Sunak, still the head of the party, he'll have to do the response to Reeves at the budget box.
And then he's gone 3 days later.
And then he's gone 3 days later.
Which makes it meaningless.
I mean, absolutely. And throw into the mix what's happening across the pond. But, you know, the key thing here I think we have to remember is that although the Labour Party will say, we are not going after the working person or the working people, if they put the 2% increase on pay-as-you-earn, PAYE income tax, that is going to directly affect working people. It really is, because these SMEs are not going to be able to afford it. That then will put prices up for the services and products that they might be selling and giving. It's just redefining the debt, redefining the names of things and just pushing money around.
Meanwhile, though, Claire, according to The Guardian, more than 1 million people in Britain, 1 million households. Will be better off after the budget.
Well, these are households living in abject poverty. And do you know that the statistic from the Trussell Group and the Joseph Rowntree Foundation is that 1 in 3 children in this country are living in poverty? The definition of poverty might change, right? But even just that word, the definition of poverty, regardless of how they are defining it in an academic process, for me, that's a child that is going without basic needs. And we are not in Victorian Britain. We are 2024, and this is still happening. I think that is an abomination. We've got food banks in this country, for heaven's sake. People have to rely getting their food from food banks. That is disgusting. It really is.
If you look at it from a political point of view, will that offset all the criticism over, for instance, cutting the winter fuel payments and things like that?
No, it won't.
If the government are able to say very poor families will be at least £420 a year better off, surely that would politically sort of stave off too much criticism.
Certainly among Labour supporters, you know, the Labour Party is designed to improve the lot of poorer people. That's what it's supposed to do.
Yes.
So that will go down well with the party's base.
Look,
However, I don't think it's going to...
It's only going to be £60 a month for a family. It's not very much at all.
But I don't think it's going to overshadow really the winter.
And most of those benefits, what they're going to do, the way they're going to do that again is by redefining the debt, because they're going to allow. They won't allow water companies or your council tax or anything else you might be in arrears with to take a bigger proportion from your benefit. That's the key. They're not giving away more money. They're going to make the repayment of debt easier for the families.
Right. Let's move on to something that isn't the budget, should we?
Can we? That'd be great. Let's.
I'm looking at the list. Is there anything that isn't actually in the budget? What's the Express saying? Well, about fuel payments.
Winter fuel payment. Yes, I mean, again...
It's not actually budget, is it? But it's still hellish.
Yeah. So we know that this was something that was announced very soon after Labour came into power, that they're means testing the winter fuel payments. However, Mel Stride, who may well be Shadow Chancellor, depending on who becomes the next Conservative leader, we're keeping an eye on that one. He has written to Liz Kendall, the Work and Pension Secretary, to say, please make sure that the people who are at least entitled to it, who receive pension credit, they're still supposed to get winter fuel payment, make sure that they actually receive it, because in many cases people who are entitled to pension credit don't actually get it, and therefore don't get winter fuel payment. So at the very least, he says, those who are still entitled to winter fuel payment, please guarantee.
So that's not
that
actually a means test. What they've done is removed the universal benefit of the winter fuel allowance.
Yeah, and only those on the very, very low.
Which they will know. They'll have
income.
that data. They will have that data, so they will know.
Well, except they are putting adverts in a lot of the papers, aren't they, saying make sure you're claiming what you need to claim.
What they're trying to do is make sure they claim pension credit if you are entitled to it.
There has been an increase. There definitely has been an increase in people claiming. It was something like 850,000.
Yeah, but apparently the document you have to sort of fill in is about 13 pages long.
And also, there's a delay, sometimes up to 10 weeks between applying and actually being approved. You know, and that is...
You're well into winter by then.
Absolutely, you know.
You're
Again, that's the fault of systems doing things online and not actually being able to speak and articulate to someone. Remember when we had banks on the high road?
Yeah.
Remember when we could go in and chat to the bank manager? Yeah.
Those were the days.
Yeah, well, they were the days, but they've gone, and they won't be
And they're
coming
not
back.
coming
Well,
No, they won't
Janby
be.
says, don't
Back.
forget, clocks go back tonight. I'm putting mine back to 1979. Hello, Mrs. Thatcher.
Right, you two, see you later.